Hello there everyone, Lars here from Camille's Harem. Not just a podcast by novice writers for novice writers, but also a YouTube channel by novice writers for novice writers. Because writing is an adventure, it's more fun with friends, and today is White Day. This is an absolutely fantastic, momentous occasion that we don't celebrate over here in the United States, and we absolutely should. For those of you who don't know what White Day is, it is the beautiful counterpart to Valentine's Day celebrated throughout the Eastern Pacific. This is where the men return threefold the chocolates that were given to them by women on Valentine's Day. In countries like China, Japan, and Korea, what's expected is that on Valentine's Day, the women are the ones who give out the chocolate. And then a month later, on March 14th, the men will reciprocate by giving back threefold in white chocolate whatever they received. That's at least the expectation. Of course, if you want to give something special to someone else, you can make a really awesome batch of white chocolate cookies, you can make some cool white chocolate ornament, or you can get some special gift. There's all kinds of things that you can do to show your love and appreciation on White Day, just like you can on Valentine's Day. And I personally like this setup because, well, for one thing, this gets men and women completely in on the whole scheme right here, the scheme of love, and it gives everyone a chance, two chances, to show their appreciation and affection and love for each other. And it's not like over here in the States, like, here's the Valentines. Oh, no, they don't know that I have a crush on them. It's kind of an expectation of, hey, here are your obligatory chocolates. And who doesn't love getting some chocolates? But in any case, for this channel, since we're all about writing and telling stories, for White Day, what I want to do is I want to give you 3 recommendations for romantic stories that I think you honestly should check out. Some of you probably have already seen or read or whatever a couple of these stories, maybe all 3 of them. And if you have, go back and appreciate all over again because it's White Day, a day of romance. My first recommendation is for you to read the manga Ogami Tsumiki to Kinjijo. This story is just so brilliant. It is so heartwarming. This seriously heals my soul each time I read it. This is a story about this poor boy, Yukata, who just is completely unsure of himself. After graduating from middle school, going on into high school, he has spent so much of his life trying to be the right thing or the right friend for everyone else that he's kind of lost a sense of himself. Who really is he, and who does he want to be? In a society where you're expected to already figure out your career choice way earlier than we do over here in the States, Yukata is completely lost. So he decides to transfer to a high school much further away where there are a bunch of beast folk. This takes place in a fantastical Japan where beast people now come out of the woodworks and now live in harmony with the rest of Japanese society. And one of the schools that's helping to integrate the two societies together is this one school that specifically caters towards beast folk but allows humans to come on in and mingle with the rest of the student body. And in his first class, Yukata ends up sitting next to this werewolf girl whose name is Tsumiki, and she is incredible. While she sticks out a bit like a sore thumb because of her crazy antics and ways, she also sticks out because she is incredibly cute. And all of the guys and all of the girls are absolutely enamored with her. And she ends up really liking Yukata because Yukata is treating her absolutely genuinely. And so this beautiful friendship is formed between these characters. Yeah, we know it's leaning towards romance. The signs are all there. But I love this story right here because of the genuine conversations about friendship, of being yourself, of getting along with others. And this manga does a beautiful job of destroying your first impressions of other people. Even some of the characters who at first you're like, oh my gosh, this person seems like an absolute jerk. As you get to know them, you then to realize everyone's got their own problems. Everyone's trying to figure out their own lives. Everyone's got strengths and got weaknesses. They've got beautiful points. They've got ugly points to themselves. Ultimately, the most important thing is that you, and really everyone, needs to strive to be the best that they can be. In this journey of discovering who you are going to discover so many facets of yourself, things that you didn't expect. You're going to encounter things that you've tried to bury. This happens to Yukata and to Tsumiki. Yet, as you strive to be the best that you can be, and have good positive friendships and relationships with other people, you find an incredible amount of happiness along the way. And you might just find someone to fall in love with. That's what makes this story so great. It's not just about the whole rom-com fluff that you get every now and then. This is just a beautiful story of self-discovery and of friendship, which again is leading towards romance, but you're meant to enjoy this incredible journey with this boy and his werewolf friend. Now, my second recommendation for White Day might be a bit of a surprising one for you, especially because it doesn't necessarily lead to romance, and yet it might just be one of the strongest love stories in the entire series. And I'm talking about the very short story between Zuko and Jin in Avatar: The Last Airbender Season 2. In the episode Tales of Ba Sing Se, we get all of these incredible short stories telling the lives of the heroes and the villains within Ba Sing Se. This is such an incredible episode, and it might seem a little bit like filler, or at least just some fun little moments of character development. However, this particular short story to me just sticks out so wonderfully. So this is where Zuko and his uncle are pretending to be refugees. They're working in a tea shop in Ba Sing Se, and this girl who is a regular to the shop, Jin, she's got her eyes on Zuko, and she's got a bit of a crush on him, and so she asks him out on a date. And Iroh, being the best man that he is, bless this uncle, he steps on in and says he would love to go. Now, the date doesn't play out the way that anyone would want a date to. Zuko's got a horrible hairdo that his uncle imposes on him. He botches the whole juggling routine at the restaurant. He doesn't know exactly what to say to Jin. And when Jin takes him to go and see this beautiful fountain with the lights, it's unlit. It seems as though this date is just going wrong in every single kind of way. And yet, we get this beautiful moment at the end where Zuko is facing the very real possibility that he could have a completely different life, other than as the exiled prince of the Fire Nation, or even as the redeemed prince of the Fire Nation. He could settle down, work in a tea shop with his uncle, and freaking fall in love with this amazing girl who, I mean, she's got the spunk, she's got the stomach, she's got the looks, she's got the friendliness, and she's got the guts to go for what she wants. Dude, my dude Zuko, that is the best girl in Avatar. I know other people are going to disagree with me on that, but seriously, just think about this. In this one short story, we are given so much. Like, it's so much that I actually thought for a while that this episode went on for way longer than 4 minutes. I thought this was like an 8-minute segment, or at least, because of just how much detail is here in this short story. The writers really understood what they were doing. That with a short story, you just get right to the meat of the matter. No fluff, no beating around the bush, just the most important things that characters can say and do, and the world building that you need in order to properly communicate the story. And there's so much happening here within these 4 minutes. We see Zuko really confronting the fact that I'm in exile. I am living a lie as the exiled prince. I'm not just some refugee. There's so much baggage that this poor boy has been carrying. And yet, in that moment with Jin, where he casts her to close her eyes and he does some fire bending in secret, this might be the first time in the entire series where we see Zuko really happy about his own bending abilities. Maybe even happier than when Iroh was teaching him how to redirect lightning. And you can even connect this scene to when the dragons teach Zuko and Aang how firebending is beautiful, how it is even constructive. It's not just a force for destruction. And here on this date, Zuko is doing that without some awe-inspiring creature telling him this all-important lesson. He is using his firebending to make someone else happy, someone who should be an enemy. And a lot of fans, I think, are correct in saying that Jin realizes that Zuko is a firebender, but that doesn't matter to her because she sees someone better. And within the story of Avatar: The Last Airbender, of course, there's a character like Mai. Zuko had his crush on her, she has a crush on him, so of course there's someone out there who likes him, but it seems as though anyone who does like Zuko is someone from the Fire Nation. Here we have someone who's meant to be an enemy falling for someone who is quite clearly from the Fire Nation. She's seeing through the facade, and she likes him despite all of that. He does something good. And she sees a sweetness in him. Yeah, he's got the hard exterior. He almost seems to always be frowning. But on this date, she has seen a more vulnerable side to him. And she wants to get to know him better. The sad thing is that this is just a one-off thing. This is just a one-shot. And so we never get to see this relationship built up further. But yet, this is just such a beautiful moment. This is romance done right. I would even argue that amongst the many romantic stories throughout Avatar: The Last Airbender, this right here between Zuko and Jin, this tale of Ba Sing Se, might just be one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful. Go ahead and argue with me in the comments about that. But before I hop on over to my third recommendation for White Day, let me just as a writer quickly get back to the matter of writing short stories. Short stories are so hard to write and yet so much fun to write, and novellas are so hard to write and so much fun to write because you have to get to the meat of the matter so quickly. You are limited with a short story by 5,000 words. If you're writing a novella, you only have 40,000 words. You have to be precise. You have to give us the most that you possibly can with the fewest words possible to tell a complete and engaging story. You really have to know what you're saying. You need to know how to weave your words. You need to know how to do action and dialogue in order to pull out the most with the limited runtime that you have, with the limited words you have. But if you can do it, you can deliver some of the most powerful stories that are out there. And now let me get to my last recommendation for White Day. And I'm going to talk about the remake and rebirth of Final Fantasy VII. Now, I know that there's a lot of the original players who have not necessarily been the happiest with how the story has clearly deviated from the original, which so many people love. Now, granted, some of the story beats and some of the information revealed in the second chapter of the remake has hinted at that while there's a multiverse of all these other options that could happen within the game, ultimately we are still streaking towards the original ending of the story, but that we are getting a chance through this to explore all of the what-ifs and questions that the original Final Fantasy left us with. And I'm just going to say, as someone who grew up with Final Fantasy VII, I had one of my best friends at the time loved the game, and he would talk my ears off for hours upon hours about it. We would sit down and play it together. We would read all of the magazines and stories about it. So I spent a lot of time with Final Fantasy VII as a little kid. It was quite formative, really. I love what the story is doing right here, especially for Cloud and Tifa. Now, let me just say this. As a kid, when I was growing up with Final Fantasy VII, I was all about that Cloud and Aerith biz. I thought it was absolutely tragic, and how dare they rip away best girl from me. She's so beautiful. She's just so kind. She's so good for Cloud. But as a man, as an adult, I have come to really appreciate who Tifa is. Her long-suffering, her incredible fortitude, strength of character, strength and muscle, everything else that she's got going on. And I love how this Final Fantasy remake and rebirth have allowed us to more fully explore the relationship between her and Cloud, and how, as the fans have been very jubilant to point out, you can finally get that sweet, sweet kiss between them in a cinematic. And that is honestly incredible to see. I really do believe that for the fans, this is a love letter to all of them, saying, look, we know that you've wanted to dive so much deeper into the story of Midgar. You've wanted to learn more about these characters. You wanted to explore the what ifs. We have read all of your fan fiction, the good and the bad. And you know what? We are going to tell a great spanning story that we hope that if you come along with the ride, you're going to learn even more about these characters, you're going to appreciate them even more, and you're going to love the rematches against some of the big villains, again, who you have loved, who have been so influential in pop culture ever since Final Fantasy VII released, and we hope that we're doing it in a way that does not detract from just how much fun and how good and influential the original Final Fantasy VII was. But there's something I want to quickly talk about in terms of romance, talking about Tifa and Cloud. So in the original, while there is definitely a scene that implies some wink wink, nod nod, that some things happen between Cloud and Tifa the night before defeating Sephiroth once and for all, the original game, quite honestly, didn't focus that much on the romance between Cloud and Tifa as much as the relationship between Cloud and Aerith. And that's because the relationship with Aerith is meant to be incredibly impactful. And now that storytelling has evolved in Japan, as a greater Western influence has been had for both good and bad in Japanese storytelling, a lot of storytellers in Japan have come to realize, look, just leaving the romances dangling like we have for so long in so many other stories might not be the best option for these characters or for telling the story. A lot of people want to see romance culminate. They want to see it fulfilled in one way or the other. Whether it works out or it doesn't, just please let us know so that way we can move on. And this game does that. It gives you the chance to explore all these different relationships and to see, well, what could happen. And for the fans of Cloud and Tifa, it gives them that chance. And that is something that, as a writer, this is actually a really big question. And what do you do with all of the different potential romances that you can give your characters? Obviously, you should be focusing on what is best for your story and best for your characters. There are some ships and relationships that you might think as the author, like, you know what, that has some merit to it, but that's not actually what my characters need. And that could even derail the plot altogether. I need to do what is right by them and by my story. However, this is something that I think every writer should take to heart. Don't just write off a potential relationship, romantic or platonic, because that's not your OTP. It's not your one true pairing. What you need to do is you need to think about what kinds of relationships am I building between my characters. For instance, as I've been writing my flagship series, The Legend of the Ten Lords, I didn't realize that one of the characters I just kind of created because I needed to fill up some space, Tori, would end up developing a strong romantic connection with one of my leads, Ben. And for the longest time, I was pushing against it, like, no, it's just some tension I subconsciously wrote into the text. Let me edit that out. But going back in the editing process, I began to realize I could actually flesh out a lot of character by exploring this potential relationship. It may fail, it may not, you'll have to read to find out, but it was fun to explore, and I'm still exploring it because the series is still ongoing, it's still evolving. But wow, I'm so glad that I didn't just simply write it off because I have an OTP and I was just going to make sure that that sailed no matter what. You should not set aside potential relationships just because it's not a part of your original plan. And to conclude, I think that the greatest advice I can give from any of these three stories is this: that what matters most with your characters, other than just that they have a character arc to them, is the relationships that they form with the other characters in your stories. Relationships reveal so much about the people that you are writing. It reveals so much about the world that you are creating. And it engages your audience more so than really almost anything else that you can do. Sure, magic, world building, politics, action scenes, all of those things are fantastic. but seeing characters develop real, relatable relationships with others, whether they be antagonistic, positive, romantic, platonic, familial, all of those relationships are what makes these characters truly come to life, and is those relationships that make the world that they are in matter, and not just exist as some stale stack of facts that you're throwing at your audience. Relationships are one of the most important things that you can create as an author. And the more that you work on creating those solid relationships with your characters, the more powerful your stories will be. So with those 3 recommendations now under your belt and some writing advice, go forth and enjoy White Day, which also is Pi Day for those of you here in the States. I hope that you're enjoying Pi Day, and if you haven't already seen it already, I have a special present for all of you for Pi Day. Check out the link. But in the meantime, that will do it for now. Thank you so much for joining us on this incredible adventure that we call writing, and until the next video, y'all, tschüss.